again. Okay, welcome to the online classes for the standard of 6, and this is our session 8. Okay, so in session 7 we started with the fourth lesson, that is sorting materials into groups. So I had explained to you what is the meaning of sorting, what is the meaning of materials. So I have explained to you and how it is being separated. So sorting means what? To separate or to segregate them. On how you are going to segregate, based on what? There are certain properties to be followed. So sometimes according to the usage we separate them, sometimes according to the color, sometimes according to the shape and the size. So like that we saw, and sometimes even because of appearance. So all this we saw in session 7. So now in session 8 you are going to see a little different way of separating things. That is how a solid can be along with the liquid. Which are the substances that can mix in water or any liquid completely, or the solids which cannot be mixed with water, that is which cannot be dissolved in water. So that you call it as, this is our next property. So this is called as soluble or insoluble. Okay, what is the meaning of soluble? Okay, soluble is, first is from the solid to liquid. Okay, now for example, you take a glass of water, add some sugar into it. Take a spoon, stir it well. So after some time, you cannot see the sugar because the sugar has completely dissolved in water. So you don't know whether it is only water or whether it is a sugar water because the color looks the same. So such type of substances, the solid substances, that we call it as soluble. Okay, soluble means which can completely dissolve itself in water and it vanishes away in water. So in the same way, you can add even salt. If you take water in a tumbler, add a spoon of salt, mix it well, and then you find there is no salt or the water is separate. So both is mixed together. So such type of substances, the solid substances, which can dissolve itself completely in water. Okay, so such substances only we call as soluble substances. Okay, and then next, there are some solid substances. When you mix in water, it does not dissolve in. So there are some solid substances which you take and mix it with water. It does not get dissolved in water. Maybe the color can change, but it does not get dissolved in water. Now for example, you take a tumbler, add some water in it. Okay, take a handful of mud, put it into the water. Stir it well. After some time you can see the color of the water has been changed. From the color of water will go into muddy color water. Okay, but after some time you allow the water to settle. All the water will be on the top layer and all the mud would have settled down at the bottom of the tumbler. So this shows that certain solid substances cannot dissolve in water completely. Okay, now for example, okay, you take a tumbler of water, crush some chalk pieces, chalk powder, okay, make it into powder, put it into the water, stir it well and allow it to rest for a few minutes. After some time you can see that all the chalk powder is being on the top layer and all the water will be settled down. Okay, so on top of the water you can see all the chalk powder is floating on the water. So even the chalk powder also cannot dissolve in water. So some solid substances which cannot dissolve itself in water, they are called as insoluble. Okay, so now I think you will be knowing the difference between soluble and insoluble. Soluble means the solids which can dissolve itself completely in water. So such solid substances are called as soluble substances. And the solid substance which cannot dissolve itself in water, such type of substances are called as insoluble substances. Okay, so in the soluble and insoluble substances, now we saw how we are mixing a solid to a liquid. The next one we are going to see a liquid to a liquid. Okay, now for example, you take a glass of water. Okay, you take a glass of water, add few drops of ink in it. Mix it well. Okay, the color of the water will be separate. It will change. Okay, but you cannot make out that the ink is separate and the water is separate. The whole water color will be changed into the ink color. Or even sometimes at home. Okay, when you want to make lime juice, what you do? You take a tumbler of water, okay, and you squeeze lime juice in it, and then you add either salt or sugar and you mix it. After some time, you see that the lime juice, the water, the sugar or the salt, everything will be combined together and it will be only like the lime juice. Okay, so that is how you get the lime juice. But when you look into it, you cannot see that the water is separate, the lime juice is separate, the sugar is separate or the salt is separate. So that gets completely mixed with water. So these type of substances also are called as soluble substances. That is from the liquid to liquid. Or if you have vinegar at home, take a tumbler of water, add few drops of vinegar in it. You cannot make out the difference that this is water and this is vinegar. It will never stay separate. It will all got mixed together. So such substances, liquid to liquid, which can dissolve or mix completely along with water, such liquids are called as soluble liquids. Okay, then next is insoluble, liquid to liquid. Okay, now for example, you eat some non-veg at home, okay, or you are going for a wedding, or you go to a restaurant or a hotel. You eat some nice biryani, okay, and then afterwards you wash your hand. When you wash your hand, still you can see the oil stains on your hand. So why does this happen? Because the oil cannot mix itself with water. That is why even after you wash your hand, still the oil substance you can feel on your hand. Now another example. Okay, anyway it is a rainy time now. Okay, when you go on the road, when the road is wet, here and there you can see the oil is shining on the water. So that is the petrol of the vehicles. So this petrol, when the vehicles are moving, one or two drops when it falls into the water and the oil never mixes together. Okay, if you have not noticed all this, you can do a small activity at home. Take a tumbler of water, add 2 drops of oil in it. Okay, don't mix it. Even if you mix it also, it's okay. After you mix, leave it to rest for a few minutes and then you look into the water. You can see that the oil is separate on the top. Okay, any one corner of it, the oil will be floating on the water. The water will be separate, the oil will be separate. So such liquids which cannot mix itself along with water, such liquids are called as insoluble liquids. Okay, so now we saw that the soluble and or insoluble is from solid to liquid and from liquid to liquid. Okay, so now the next property what we are going to see, that is whether the objects can float on water or whether it can sink in water. Okay, so this is our last property which we are going to see now. Okay, so that is certain things will float on water, certain things will immediately sink in water. So why does this happen, and which are the things which can float on water and which are the things that can sink in water? Now for example, you are having a bucket of water. Take a few pieces of paper, put it in on the water. Put your hand and stir it well. Allow the water to rest for a few minutes. After some time, when you see, the papers will be floating on the top of the water. Why does it float? Because the paper is lighter than water. So all the materials or the objects which are lighter than water will float on water. Okay, now in this rainy season, when there is heavy rain, you can see the water just rushing out on the streets. So when the waters are moving with full speed, do you find only the water going? No, you find pieces of paper on it, you find dry leaves on it. So how does all this move along with water? Because they are lighter than water. So any objects that is lighter than water will float on water. Okay, for example, as I told you, pieces of paper or dry leaves, all these can float on the water, or a small piece of wood. You put a small piece of wood, it will float on water. Okay, there are certain objects which are heavier than water. So the objects which are heavier than water will sink in water. Now to the same bucket of water, you take a 5 rupees coin or a 10 rupees coin, put it into the water. It will go and settle down at the bottom of the container. Why? Because the coin is heavier than water. So all the objects which are heavier than water will sink in the water. For example, a coin, iron nail. Okay, so all this, if you put it in water, it will go and sink down because they are more heavier than the water. So the objects which are lighter than water will float on water, and the objects which are heavier than water will sink in the water. So these are all the properties what we have seen. So the next what we are going to do is about the transparency. Yes, children. Now we'll continue with the last method, how we are going to separate the things. Okay, so that is called as transparency. In transparency, you have got three methods. Okay, one is transparent, one is translucent, and one is opaque. Now I'll tell you what is transparent. Transparent means when you take something and look into it, the other side, what object is present will be clearly seen. Now, for example, my specs. Okay, when I wear my specs, I am able to see through it what are the objects on the other side. So, this is an example for transparent. Okay, any glass items. So, that is an example for transparent. And next is the translucent. Translucent means partially you will be able to see, but you cannot see clearly what are the objects on the other side. Now, for example, if you take a butter paper, just hold it in front of you. Okay, partially you can see some images there on the other side, but you cannot identify what is the image on the other side. You can see, but it is not clear. It has got a partial vision. So that is called as translucent. And next is the opaque. Opaque means what is there on the other side is completely not visible. Okay, nothing can be seen on the other side. Now, for example, you are standing in front of a wall. Can you tell what is there behind the wall? Definitely not, because wall is an example of opaque objects. So, these are the three methods of transparency. One is the transparent, where you can see the objects clearly on the other side. Translucent, you can partially see, but you cannot identify what are the items or what are the objects on the other side. Opaque, nothing is visible on the other side. So these are the methods of how you are going to sort the materials into their particular groups. Okay, so this is the end of our fourth lesson, and if you have any doubts, you can come and clarify your doubts. Okay, and the assignments will be sent on the groups. Thank you, children.